ज्योति स्टेनो टाइपिंग कॉलेज में आप सभी का स्वागत है बच्चों। ये जो डिक्टेशन जो जैसे मैं इकट्ठी 3 पढ़ता हूँ, ये डिक्टेशन इकट्ठी 3 इसलिए पढ़ी जाती हैं भी जो आपको 1000 या 800 डिक्टेशन आपको मिलेंगी वहाँ पर, तो वो आपको लिखने में, पढ़ने में, टाइप जब करो तो जैसे मतलब इसमें एक्यूरेसी आपकी ज़्यादा रहे। तो इसीलिए जो ये आप जो 3 डिक्टेशन इकट्ठी करते हो, इसको लिखना, पढ़ना और टाइप करना ज़रूरी है। ऐसे भी अगर हम एक भी डेली करते हैं, यदि कुछ ही दिन करेंगे वैसे तो, फिर उसके बाद जो है 1 तारीख से तो एज एक्चुअल ही हम सारे टेस्ट देंगे, क्योंकि 80 वालों को 80 के हिसाब से लेंगे, 100 वालों को 100 के हिसाब से। तो ये 4-5 दिन बचे हैं इस महीने के, तो इसमें जो है इस तरह से अगर आप इसकी प्रैक्टिस कर लेते हो और एज ए अनसीन जो है शुरू में एक आते ही डिक्टेशन लिखते हो, तो आपके लिए बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट रहेगी। 15 और 16 फरवरी वाले जो अभी से जो बच्चों ने तैयारी करनी स्टार्ट की थी, उनके लिए बातें हैं ये। 100 वालों के लिए ये इसलिए इम्पोर्टेंट है भाई, इससे आपका क्या है भाई, आपका जो कंसंट्रेट ज़्यादा बनेगा, आउटलाइन पढ़ने का तरीका बनेगा। अभी एक टेस्ट लिया था मैंने, तो उसमें आउटलाइन एक लाइन मिस हुई और वो 3-4 बच्चों की मिस हो गई। तो कंसंट्रेट जब पढ़ने का जो बनेगा टाइप के साथ, तो जिससे लाइन मिस वगैरह भी कम होंगी। एक दूसरा सेंटेंस को आप जैसे मतलब जो मैटर होता है कोई भी, वैसे ही नहीं कि उल जुलूल बोला जाता है, वो किसी विषय पर होता है, तो उस विषय टॉपिक को पकड़ा करो, किस टॉपिक से रिलेटेड है ये। फिर जब कोई आप सेंटेंस जब स्ट्रक्चर आप बनाओगे, तो जिसमें वर्ड भी जो है आप एक्चुअली सही बना पाओगे। दूसरा, इसमें जो पेन का जो कलेक्शन है, पेन या पेंसिल जो भी आप इस्तेमाल करते हो बहुत शार्प होनी चाहिए। पेन जो है जैसे सेलो ग्रिप पर, जैसे मैं रिकमेंड करता रहता हूँ, ऐसा पेन हो जो पेन जो है इंक ना छोड़े, क्योंकि अगर थोड़ी सी भी इंक छुड़ जाती है तो आउटलाइन का कुछ बन जाता है, और वैसे भी स्पीड से लिखना होता है तो फिर वो आउटलाइन गड़बड़ कर देती है। जैसे भी रानू ने एक्चुअली को लिटिल लिख दिया और कसूर बताया पेन का, भी पेन ने जो गड़बड़ कर दी, पेन जो है वो इंक जो है थोड़ी इधर उधर हो गई। तो पेन कौन सा आपका? तो सेलो ग्रिपर ने कैसे धोखा दिया आपको?
नहीं छोड़ता, लास्ट में आगे छोड़ देता है, जो दबा के लिखता है उसका छोड़ता है।
अच्छा, जो दबा के लिखता है, पटेल ने जैसे बताया, डिस्कवर करते रहते बच्चे, जो दबा के लिखता है तो उसका छोड़ता है। तो मैं पढ़ने जा रहा हूँ कैलाश चंद्र डिक्टेशन 193, 94, 95। डिक्टेशन स्टार्ट आफ्टर 5 सेकेंड। I now come to the question of reduction in fares. The Transport Advisory Council has recommended an increase in fares. The fact has to be remembered that compared to the passenger fares on the domestic services in foreign countries, passenger fares in the Indian Airlines Corporation are quite low. The fares on certain domestic sectors in Australia and the tourist class in the USA are, however, very low because of favorable circumstances of high utilization of equipment and personnel and high load factor. Such circumstances do not prevail in India. Before nationalization, some of the private airlines charged very low fares which were clearly uneconomic. It is true that lower fares have a better charm in attracting traffic, but expansion of traffic at lower fares, however desirable it may be as an objective, would amount to a loss. If we are losing now, and if we say that we will attract more traffic by lowering the fares, the traffic might increase, but then the loss is not likely to be covered. So, the fact therefore is that the Transport Advisory Council has recommended that there should be an increase in the air fares. That is the factual position in regard to the Indian Airlines Corporation, and honorable members will see that while there has been loss, it has not been of the magnitude that is mentioned, and secondly, the future improvements that we are going to undertake would certainly reduce the depreciation costs, but we must wait in course of time for the full traffic that would be carried by the Boeings to make them near economic. Of course, the fact always remains that in most countries airlines have to be subsidized, and I can also tell the House about the requests that have been constantly made to, namely, that if we take away the excise duty on aviation petrol, the corporation will show a profit immediately. That can be done if we merely want to cheat the public, or even for the time being full members of parliament into a feeling that this corporation is making a profit, but I feel that I would be much better for them to show a loss and to strive to lessen it than to gain an advantage of the type mentioned by me. This is a matter which has not been decided, and I am making a mention of it. We can easily wipe off the big loss, but that would not be the correct thing to do, because government would be doing something in order to bolster up an industry which it is running. I am sorry that Mrs. Leelavati Munshi is not here, because she raised the question about the working of the state undertakings. I only illustrate the point that I am not prepared to camouflage the real position by means of any secret subsidies, and if we are going to do anything of that sort, it has to be told to members of parliament. If a state undertaking results in loss, then it is to be admitted as a loss. There are various considerations which make us take up a certain undertaking in the state sector, and the Parliament is certainly entitled to know how it is being run. Therefore, I would like to assure the House that so far as state undertakings are concerned, we shall do our very best to see that they are run efficiently, and if they are not run efficiently or incur losses, we shall not make any attempt to camouflage the real position so far as Parliament is concerned, because it is only by the criticism of honorable members of Parliament that the position could possibly be improved. Sir, some reference about disparities in development of different states was made just now. All that I can say is that the 8th plan has taken this matter into account, but disparities exist not merely because of neglect of government, but also because of certain natural factors. We can only try to overcome them in parts. We can only try to overcome them in parts. We cannot altogether eliminate them completely. Wherever we cannot establish a big industry in one particular area, we try to supplement it by putting a number of smaller industries and creating more employment potential. This is a task in the fulfillment of which the Planning Commission is doubly interested, and I can assure honorable members that if there is any default, it is not because it can possibly be avoided. I think, sir, a reference was made about slum clearance and slum houses. I wish my young colleague Mr. Chandra had taken charge of it earlier, but sir, I would like to claim a little privilege in regard to this particular matter, because I am very deeply interested in this problem myself. I would refer to the recent statement made by the Honorable Minister for Urban Development in the Lok Sabha, a copy of which has been placed on the table of the Rajya Sabha. The government are alive to the urgency of the problem. Turning to internal resources for the plan, I do not propose here to offer any detailed comments on particular tax measures or on the particular criticisms as those offered by honorable members. But I wish to make it clear that the problem before us is as much of internal resources as of external resources. The only difference between the two is in terms of the degree of freedom of action that we ourselves enjoy in regard to them, because it is possible for us to raise internal resources provided a large measure of public support is coming behind this. It would not be possible even so to raise external resources, and that is the basic distinction between the two types of resources that we need. I have said on a number of occasions that in the present circumstances we shall have to try and reduce deficit financing over the plan period below the original estimate of rupees 1200 crores. That implies much greater effort at economy in regard to expenditure, both developmental and non-developmental, and greater reliance on other sources of finance, namely taxation, borrowing, and small savings. The additional taxation measures at the center constitute the greatest prop we have built so far in support of the 12th plan and our developmental effort in general. In the light of the experience, we shall strengthen this prop by administrative and other measures as are required to make it carry the burden of higher and higher levels of developmental outlay. I think, sir, that by taking a large step forward in many directions, we have also created a horizon of reasonably stable expectations with reference to which private industry can make its plans for the future. Sir, it is said the proof of the pudding is in the eating thereof, and only the future will show how far the new orientation that we have given to the tax system will serve the needs of a developing economy. I cannot, of course, lay claim to having satisfied all tastes. My friends of the opposition parties, for example, feel so strongly about one point that they had to make their views felt in the other house by a division. While much has been done in the sphere of central taxation, a great deal more needs to be done in regard to mobilizing the savings of the people, small and large, whether for the public sector or the private sector. Honorable members will appreciate that the large increase in borrowing from the banks by private business indicates that the problem of finding non-inflationary finance for development. It also throws upon the government the responsibility for keeping a more watchful eye on monetary movements that they normally have to do. Therefore, it makes it all the more necessary for us to mobilize the savings of the people, and the problem of internal resources for the plan rests on that at the present juncture. My colleague speaking yesterday spoke about small savings, so that I will content myself with impressing once again on honorable members the organizational and other efforts that we must make to promote savings if internal resources are yet to be avoided from becoming a bottleneck in our plan implementation. While I am still on the subject of internal resources, I would like to refer to one point made by our House's financial expert. He complained about the lack of uniformity in the rate of sales tax in different states and suggested the introduction of a comprehensive bill in Parliament. To bring about uniformity, the first point to remember in this context is that taxation of sales or purchases inside a state is a state subject, while that on sales or purchases in the course of interstate trade is a union subject. As regards the state sales tax, after the coming into force of the Central Sales Tax Act of 2006, certain goods have been declared to be of special importance in interstate trade or commerce, that is cotton, yarn, coal, etc. On these commodities, restrictions have been imposed on the powers of states to levy tax. The price of essential commodities are very high and life for everyone is very hard. We live therefore under threats of strikes, which if they come off are bound to paralyze our development schemes, to say nothing of the inconvenience caused to citizens and the financial loss which the country's exchequer can certainly not support. In view of the steep rise in prices, the Pay Commission is bound to recommend some kind of relief. I personally am glad that a commission has been appointed, because whatever restrictive or penalty legislation is brought in, it can never make for general contentment and well-being, either mental or physical. And without these there can never be any enthusiasm in the hearts of the workers, nor any industry on their part. Now, why has there been such a steep rise in food prices, and why has there been such a steep rise in food prices, and why is the government unable to control the same? Production figures, we are told, have not gone down. We have had good harvests last year. Then where has the food gone? Is inflation responsible to a large extent for this debacle, or are our figures for production wrong, and how much of our food grains have gone underground into the hands of black marketers? Why cannot government bring these anti-social elements to heel? These are questions which have to be faced squarely. Increase in salaries will cost the exchequer hundreds of crores of rupees. Where is the money to come from in addition to what is needed for the plan? As far as salaries are concerned, the time has come, I think, for government to fix a minimum wage for the worker and to give him relief in the shape of free primary education for two of his children, old age pension, free living quarters, fair price shops rather than dearness allowance. I feel the moment anybody's salary is raised, he is inclined to spend more. A socialistic pattern of society means, as I understand it, a society where everyone has food, shelter, clothing, and employment and equal opportunities for his material, moral, and spiritual development. If the salaries of our workers are fixed at a reasonable minimum and the other relief given to them, I think we shall be fulfilling one of our main objectives, that is, an improved standard of life for millions. I have often felt that perhaps we lay too much stress on our big projects. Sir, I have just mentioned the anti-social elements that succeed in hoarding and black marketing our food grains. But if I may be permitted to say so, anti-social elements have penetrated everywhere. Food and drug adulteration are rampant in spite of laws, and likewise one hears on all sides complaints of bribery, corruption, and nepotism, and if we are to progress, of course, efficiency and integrity go hand in hand, as do their opposite numbers. True patriotism demands today more than at any other time high standard of integrity and efficiency, and in their restoration both the public and the government must make common cause. If the public demands standard of integrity from the government machinery, it must set standards of behavior for itself too, for the lawbreaker or the brief giver is just as, if not more guilty, as those whom he tempts. Criticism is always easy to indulge in, but is not always helpful. Therefore, I had put forward certain concrete suggestions last session for the consideration of the finance minister, which in my humble opinion would provide permanent sources of revenue in addition to, and in some instances to replace, what he is tapping. The reply which the finance minister was pleased to give to the two suggestions regarding the levying of excise duties on liquor and salt was not convincing, if he will pardon my saying so. I for one do not mourn so much over the loss of revenue to government as I do over the dishonesty that prohibition by law brings in its wake. At the same time, why should the money that the government needs so badly go into the pockets of unworthy elements. Sir, man would accept the hardest discipline if he could be convinced of the rights of the measures imposed on him. But man will always question the validity of rules if he does not know their source, because he can only think morally if he is improved from within. The goal to improve man does not consist in making him go through the gestures of morality. If moral rules are arbitrarily imposed, no matter what their practical value is, they will never fight successfully against the inherent weaknesses of human nature. Educate him, persuade him, show him that you care for his welfare, and he will follow you. Bring the heavy hand of the law of the country down on him, and he is bound to try to evade. ये टोटल वर्ड बता देता हूँ आपको पहले। तेईस सौ इक्यावन ये वर्ड हैं। 2351 डिवाइड बाई 20 का बनाना क्या बनेगा?
90 का सर 3
डिवाइड बाई 28.34 82 की स्पीड दी है, और जो है वेबसाइट पे इसको लगा दिया गया 110 मिनट दिए गए हैं टाइप करने के लिए। पहले इसको अच्छे से पढ़ेंगे और फिर इसको टाइप कर देंगे। इस क्लास के अंदर इतना ही बच्चों। नमस्कार बच्चों।